Recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Gallagher, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Ratner, the president in Vietnam said, and I quote, "Look, I think China has a difficult economic problem right now for the whole range of reasons that relate to the international growth and lack thereof, and the policies that China has followed. And so I don't think it's going to cause China to invade Taiwan. And matter of fact, the opposite. It probably doesn't have the same capacity that it had before." Do you agree with the assessment that China's economic difficulties will make them less aggressive militarily? And if so, what empirical support would you offer in support of that hypothesis?
Congressman, I would say in response that the Defense Department were focused on strengthening combat credible deterrence.
You don't have a view. I mean, you're the China expert in the building. Do you have a view on whether China's economic difficulties make them more or less aggressive militarily, which I would argue is directly relevant to the question of how do we defend against such an invasion?
Congressman, I'd be happy to provide a more detailed answer to that in a classified session.
So you don't want to answer that in public session?
Let me give you an assessment based upon the information that we have. I would prefer to do that in a classified session.
Just an assessment based on your deep expertise, for which I have enormous respect and which I've repeatedly praised publicly.
Congressman, I appreciate that. Again, I'd rather take that question into a classified session.
Okay. The president in that same press conference said that our goal is not to contain China. Do you agree with that? And if you do, what is our end state with respect to China if it's not containment?
We articulate our goal as it relates to the PRC as integrated deterrence, and we articulate our role in the Indo-Pacific as building a free and open Indo-Pacific alongside our allies and partners.
Okay. The president in that same press conference said, I don't want to get this wrong, the only existential threat humanity faces, even more frightening than a nuclear war, is global warming going above 1.5 degrees in the next 20 to 10 years. Do you agree with that assessment that the threat of global warming is greater than the threat of thermonuclear war with China?
What I would say, Congressman, the 2022 National Defense Strategy identifies the PRC as the department's top pacing challenge, and that's what we're focused on as our priority at the department.
So is the president suggesting something different than the prioritization in the NDS?
I'm not going to speak for the president, sir. I'm just going to say, as it relates to the 2022 NDS, I believe we are focused on the pacing challenge of the PRC, I believe, with the consistency and focus and urgency that you're suggesting is required.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I actually think the question of prioritization matters greatly because, as you know, there are some who suggest that, indeed, we need to cooperate with China when it comes to climate change. I would argue this is naive at best, and China has no interest in sort of abiding by commitments that are made at COP27 or any other international fora. As their record demonstrates, and in a practical level, our attempts to engage with China on that issue undermine the urgency that we need to take key defensive action, particularly when it comes to our military competition. Along those lines, when it comes to this renewal of engagement as a foundation of our foreign policy with respect to China, we've had 4 cabinet-level officials, or 3 plus Secretary or former Secretary Kerry. How has that improved the security situation in the Indo-Pacific?
Do you want to take this to the State Department?
Secretary Blinken has been very clear that we will cooperate where our interests align, but that we're not afraid of competing and we're not afraid of contesting where we must. So we believe that we need to manage this relationship responsibly. The American people expect us to manage the relationship responsibly. Our allies and partners expect us to manage the relationship responsibly, and so we'll continue to do that. That involves continuing to have open lines of communication.
Is it not true that our attempts to establish a crisis communication channel, military-to-military communication, have been rebuffed by the Chinese Communist Party?
Absolutely. We have, Secretary Austin has said repeatedly that we are interested in maintaining open lines of communication, and by and large, with some exceptions, but by and large, the PLA has not been responsive to that.
And then finally, in the 36 seconds I have left, putting on my Select Committee on China hat, taking off my HASC hat, we just did a war game in New York that focused on the economic and financial aspects of this conflict. I guess I just sort of assumed that there were people at Treasury and Commerce wargaming and doing sort of financial and economic escalation the way we do rigorously when it comes to conventional and nuclear escalation. Have you, Dr. Ratner, ever participated in such an exercise with Treasury and Commerce officials?
Yes, I have. I have participated in multiple interagency tabletop exercises with representatives from Treasury and Commerce in which they are considering the employment of economic tools as part of crisis and conflict.
Well, my time has expired. I look forward to following up offline.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentleman